Hi, everybody. Everything I thought I knew is now gone. So this is me live. So I saw this movie in 2010 called The Way, and it starred Martin Sheen as a workaholic dentist, and his son, wayward, wandering son, played by his real-life son, Emilio Estevez, is going off to walk the Camino de Santiago, which is with pilgrimage in Spain. And so in the movie, basically the father is not happy. He wants the son to go out and get like a real job and not, stop the wandering, get serious. The son says, "You just don't understand, Dad." Goes off to do the Camino. Well, the son ends up dying on the trek, and the father has to go to Spain to retrieve his body. And when he's there, he realizes, he sees the son's backpack, and he's inspired to pick it up and just to do the trek, finish the trek that his son began. And he takes with him his son's ashes, and he walks the Camino. And it's, spectacular scenery, it's beautiful. And he walks the whole way, and then he gets to the cathedral. And at the cathedral, there's this amazing mass going on, this huge, gorgeous, old cathedral. And they have this gargantuan incense container, I guess urn, but so big. And they fill it up, and it's like almost like, ringing a bell when you have a whole group of people pulling on a really big cord. It takes all of these guys to lift this up, and it swings to the cathedral, and it's dipping down, and it's swooping, and it's almost hitting people, and it's so dramatic. And I think, oh my God, this is amazing. And the father ends up, of course, he's a changed man. So I think to myself, this Camino, that looks like a really cool thing to do. I'm gonna do that someday. But not now, because like 2010, my life is pretty good. Everything's going well. Like I don't have to go ponder life's big questions on some trek. So, but what I didn't know was that 2010 was the calm before the storm. 2014, things changed pretty dramatically. First, it started with my husband, who was diagnosed with a rare foot disease that caused the bones in his feet to disintegrate. For the next 10 years, he would need multiple surgeries to reconstruct his feet. And then later that year, my dad, who was 84 and in really great shape, we thought, fell. And I took him to the emergency room because I wanted to make sure he didn't have a concussion. And the doctor came in and told me he had metastasized brain cancer. He died a week later. My mom and dad were married for 67 years. And my mom, who was in pretty good shape before Dad died, just started failing. And she started falling, and she ended up dying a year later. And then my husband and I met walking dogs. I'm a complete dog fanatic. My license plate says Pavlov. And we met walking our dogs, and he had one, I had one, and they looked just alike. It's kind of like 101 Dalmatians. And a year later, they walked us down the aisle. And right after Mom passed, they were 14 by then, and they started to fail. And we lost them within a month of each other. And then, sounds like a bad country song, I'm sorry. And then my nephew, Chris, who was like a son to me, lived with me several times, had struggled with drug use for many years, and he died of an opioid overdose. And, these things happen, and they don't happen all at once. They come in waves. Something comes in, it just overwhelms you. And then you get through it, you feel like you're in an alternative reality. I used to say it's like a parallel universe. You're not in real life. But you get through it. But life never really goes back to the way it was. You're changed. In 2023, another wave was coming. My older sister had been diagnosed with a disease we knew would be fatal. And she was struggling, and it was just brutal to watch. And I had this feeling like, where was that Camino again? I need to go somewhere. I need to do this. So I did. And what I learned is Camino, first of all, it's Spanish for the way. And it's this pilgrimage that's been going on for thousands of years. And there's no like set day or time or anything like that. You simply find out where you want to start, you go to a starting point, and you start walking. And you just put one foot in front of the other, and your job is to stay on the road. There's one path, you go on that path, and you stay on it until you get to Santiago de Compostela. And I had no idea what would happen when I got there, or even what would happen on the way, but I just knew I had to do this. So I did it. I was there and I started walking, and it was gorgeous. I chose to go from Porto, Portugal, and up the coast and over, and it was about 175 miles. And I had 2 weeks to do that. And so I was doing between 12 and 20 miles a day. And that seemed, I ran the Boston Marathon a long time ago. So the distance didn't really scare me so much. But what I didn't know is that Portugal has a lot of cobblestone. And we live in Portland, so we know from cobblestone. And cobblestone's wicked hard to walk on. It hurts. And a lot of the little villages that were beautiful that we would go through, these ancient villages, they were gorgeous, but they were always at the bottom of a big hill. And you would have to go up the big hill and then over to the next one. So it was a lot, it was harder than I thought it was going to be. So to me, it felt like I was doing a marathon every day for 2 weeks. It was not an easy one. But what I loved about it is that as I walked, the people around me, I kept seeing kind of the same faces, because when you start the walk and you're kind of on this pattern, you tend to see some of the same people every day. I found there were people from all over the world who'd come to do this walk, and you'd chit chat and say hello and say buen camino, which is how we always greet everybody, and then people would speak. Almost everyone, at least that I met, could speak at least a little bit of English, but none of them spoke it as a first language, or very few, not none, but very few. So you find that, with greeting and nodding and seeing the same faces, it's like you're creating a community, but it's a community of strangers. You really don't know each other at all, but there's this respect you have because everyone's on a journey. So we're going along, and we're in our days, and I met a couple of people that just really stayed with me. And the first one was, I was at breakfast one day, and I was seated with a really just beautiful women, 2 women from Costa Rica, whom I thought were sisters. I remember seeing them earlier in the trail, and I saw them like posing for pictures, and I thought they're just on a nice vacation together because they look really happy and blah blah. And I said, so what brings you here? And they looked at me and they said, oh, well, we both lost our husbands last year. And I said, it was so different from my assumption. And I felt almost ashamed of assuming that they were like on vacation. And it just was that reminder, like everybody has a story. Like, nobody does this for nothing. You're doing it for a reason, and just changed my perspective. And another lady I met, I was watching her walk, and I was astounded because she's an older woman, and every step was so much effort. She was having trouble moving her leg in the right way, so it was just clearly requiring a tremendous amount of work for her to do this walk. And she'd stopped to take a break, and I was walking by her, so I stopped to say hello, and it turns out she was from Chicago, and she had dreamed of doing the Camino her whole life. And she's devoutly Catholic. This was a religious journey for her. And her son offered to take her. And she said, I'm 84, but I wasn't gonna say no. And I was just so inspired. So we kept going day by day, and they have these great mile markers that tell you, well, actually kilometer markers, but you get the point. The numbers were going down the closer we got to Santiago. And the excitement's building. You're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get to the end of this at some point here. And the numbers go from 3 digits to 2 digits, down to 1 digit. The last day, it's 16 miles, it's uphill, it's 96 degrees, and I'm dying. And I'm just, please, just get me to the cathedral. And I'm almost ready to take a cab. But no, I'm gonna do this, damn it. So you come in and you get to the cathedral and, nothing. I kept thinking, what, is there gonna be like a crowd waiting, like, yay, good for you? Or like with the Boston Marathon, a Mylar blanket, or like, or maybe incense swinging in the cathedral, something. No, there was a sign that said, it was a line of tourists waiting to get into the cathedral. And there was a sign that said, no backpacks allowed. And I thought, really? I just walked all this way and you're not gonna let me into the cathedral because I have a backpack? But ditched my backpack, went into the cathedral, and sat in one of the pews, and it's a magnificent space, and there was no swinging incense. They only do that on special occasions, it turns out. I felt a little cheated. But I pulled out some mementos I had brought with me, some tokens, my mom's rosary, my father's wedding ring, which is this, and my nephew's earrings, this is my sister Rebecca's necklace. And I thought about them, and I felt they were with me the whole time. And I had no idea when I started that journey what I was going to get out of it. But I started to see a path and a reason and the connection. When I went outside the cathedral, there were all these people that I had met along the way. We really didn't know each other well, but it felt like, we were just celebrating that moment. We did it. And congratulating each other and hugging each other, and it was kind of interesting because you're probably never going to see these people again in your life, but for that moment they're like your best friends, and you're not sad about saying goodbye because it's just the way it is. It's about that moment. So we said goodbye, and I came home to Maine, and I'd only been gone a few weeks, but by the time I got back I went to see Rebecca, and she'd really faded, and I was stunned when I walked into her room. She had that gaunt look. Having been through a few deaths, there's a moment when you just know someone is just on their way out, and that's how it was. And it was just, I couldn't even believe it. It was so fast. Our family gathered around her. We stayed with her. We held her hand. We took turns staying with her. And she was mostly sleeping, and then sometimes she would just wake up and she would engage a little bit, and then she would go back to sleep. And I was sitting there with her, and at one point she sat up and she looked at me and said, I can't believe I'm dying. I said, I can't believe it either. Morning, a couple of days after that, which turned out to be her last day, we were sitting there quietly watching her breathe. And, I'm watching her chest rising and falling. And I started kind of breathing with her, like unconsciously, just mimicking her breath. Breathing in and out, and in and out, and in. And the light was shining in the window on her face. She was perfectly still. She was gone. And in the weeks after she died, I started to understand what the Camino was teaching me. The Camino really prepared me to be with my sister in a way that I wasn't able to be with other people who died in the past. And it was because it was all about putting yourself completely in the experience and not expecting it to turn out any certain way, but just being there, fully engaged in the moment. That's how it felt to go through this process with Rebecca. And she had what I would call a beautiful death. We were all there. She was surrounded by love. And I thought, that's what I want. I had this revelation, they're gone, but I'm still here. I have a life to live. And I want to live my life full out. I want to do the things that are really most important to me, even if they scare me. Like standing here telling you this story tonight, which is definitely a part of that process. And then the words from the movie came back to me. You know, the son says to the father, "You don't choose a life, Dad, you live one." And to me, that's the key right there. It's, you know, we don't choose so many of the things that happen to us in life. What we do get to choose is how we use every moment that we're given to its utmost, to live the lives that we want to live.
Mr. Hallee.